Hey everyone, it's Andrew Klavan with this week's interview with Sebastian Gorka, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. I always like talking to Gorka about the state of MAGA world because along with being a shockingly decent human being for a man who talks like a Bond villain, he's a Trump loyalist, but also a very, very honest guy. So I know I'm going to hear a defense of Trump's actions and what he's thinking about and where he's going, but I always hear it in an honest way, which I really appreciate. He doesn't blow smoke at me, and that makes a big difference from most political interviews. He was the deputy assistant for strategy to the president of the United States, who you will remember was Donald Trump. He's currently a presidential appointee to the National Security Education Board at the Department of Defense, and he's the host of America First, a nationally syndicated radio show on the Salem Radio Network. He has had me on a couple of times, but usually the standard is much higher, and it's a terrific show. The Gorka Reality Check is the newest show on Newsmax TV, which is also great. Sebastian Gorka, it's great to see you, pal. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing very well, especially since I'm talking to the host of my favorite podcast, well, outside of my own. But I'm wondering where the gold MAGA hat is that I bought you, why you're not wearing it. And I want to know, is your new book a bestseller even before it's been released? I need to know these things.
You know, it's funny. I forgot to bring in my book, A Woman Underground. I forgot to put it in so I could put it in front of my camera. And I also have that MAGA hat. It's in my office, that golden MAGA hat. I kind of, every now and again, I just lift it up like the orb, you know, in an Indiana Jones movie. But I love that hat.
We should do a more, I'm going to convince Ben Shapiro and Jeremy, they have to do a deep fake of the opening scene with the golden idol, but it's you as Indiana Jones, and it's the gold MAGA hat that's been stolen.
That would be good. And I could just see the MSM, the snakes and the darts coming out of her. So here we are at this moment. We've just come out of, when we're recording, we've come out of the DNC, and I never cease to be amazed at the news media and how they degrade themselves, just enthusing over people like Kamala Harris and Tim Walz as if they were impressive. But they made a complete fools of themselves. And the bump, there was a little modest bump, I think, afterwards, but it was nothing compared to the ecstasy that we saw on the media. The polls now show Trump and Kamala basically running neck and neck, which is, I think, what we would kind of expect at this moment. The political season now begins in earnest. How are you feeling about this election?
Well, I take nothing for granted. This isn't about what they did in 2020. I'm kind of bored with people saying, well, can you prove they stole things in 2020? Wake up, okay? Are you a cretin? They've been stealing elections since Joe Kennedy, the bootlegger, stole the election for JFK, his son. This is the only, I have traveled to many countries of this globe. This is the only developed nation where there is a national joke about one of the political parties having dead people vote for them repeatedly. I know no other nation that says, hey, do you know that the people of London are dead and they vote for the Labour Party? We do that here in America with the Democrats of Chicago, of Philly, of Baltimore. So let's be clear. The left steals elections. I take nothing for granted at all. As a Green Beret just told me, we fight like the third monkey trying to get on Noah's Ark. That's what we do for the next 2 months. As the president said at Butler, Pennsylvania, in that, era-making photograph, that era-making 54 seconds, fight, fight, fight. So I'm not going to do predictions because these bastards want to steal it. The fact that they're not removing Bobby Kennedy from the ballots in the states where he has withdrawn, that's called cheating as well, by the way. So God willing, we do our part. President Trump is reelected. We can save the republic, but it's going to be fight, fight, fight for the next 2 months.
It is amazing. It doesn't speak to their confidence that they are trying to keep Kennedy on and trying to take Cornel West off. I mean, it doesn't say, oh boy, this is a confident party. Right. It just feels they have this wrapped up. So there is something.
Well, neither does the fact, and this is from Rich Barris and others, one of the few pollsters that I actually trust. If everything was so hunky-dory, if the brat is going to win, why is she stealing our platform? I mean, from not taxing tips to building the border wall. You don't steal the other party's platform if you think it's going really well.
Yeah. I trust her to build the border wall. I just think it's going to be made out of Legos. I think that's the only, the only problem. So I've been watching Trump really carefully because I feel that a lot of people have acclimated to him and they don't pay attention to him. And he's a very, very shrewd operator. He pays attention. I pointed out before the Biden debate that he had developed a new discipline and that he might actually be able to let Biden destroy himself. And he actually did. I mean, that was not typical of Trump, that he's playing a little bit more political ball with people than he was before. What are you seeing from him? Are there things, if you could give him one piece of advice, you could call him on the phone, and I know you talk to him from time to time, I mean, but if you could say, look, this is the one thing I think you should change, what would you tell him?
Well, I did call him recently, and I told him he needs to get rid of, Chris Lasavida, and, thank the good Lord, a few days later, my friend Corey Lewandowski was brought back in to manage the campaign, which is great. Look, it's what I say on my show. I think it came to me as I was ruminating after my wife and I, Katie, went to the convention in Milwaukee. And I realized, and it gets kind of hurts for people like you and me who are political junkies, who eat, drink, and sleep this stuff.
Right.
Most Americans aren't political. I mean, there's a shocking stat that between 18 and 28% of the electorate decides who they're going to vote for in the last 8 days before the election. Now think about that. In the last week, you can go from Hillary to Trump. I mean, that means they're apolitical. They're not members of tribes. We have our base. They have their lunatic cult that believes a man can become a woman and we don't need borders. And so as a result, where are elections won? They're always won in the middle. The undecideds, the independents, the fence sitters. So as a result, we don't need to talk policy in the last 2 months. Okay, we don't need to talk about, the fractal return on interest rates and all. No, forget about that. We need to do what the president did when he came back onto Twitter for the first time just prior to the 2-hour discussion from Elon Musk. And I'd been praying for this. What did he do in that post? He literally posted the question from Ronald Reagan. Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? That's the only question. I had Alina Habba, his amazing lawyer, on my show a few weeks ago. And she made it even more trenchant. She took that long question and she said, this is all you have to do. Just ask your friends, your neighbors, how you doing? How you doing? After the last 3.5 years, how are you doing? Kitchen table, not policies. And then what are the 3 things that are most aggravating to all Americans right now, if they live in the real world? Open border, I mean, just shockingly, tens of millions. Crime, the 2 are inextricably linked. And lastly, the economy, which is also linked. So stick to kitchen table. When the president recently posted on Truth this little video from Bedminster, where he walked along a table with staples of life, flour, eggs, bacon. And he said, this was the price 4 years ago. This is what it is today. No. That's all he needs to talk about. Hammer that home again and again and again. And then maybe just repost these videos of Black voters who saying, I mean, that woman on MSNBC, was it last week, who started crying because she said, I'm a paralegal. Why do I have to choose between my children eating and me eating? Because we can't both eat, because I can't afford to feed us both. Boom, gut punch, kitchen table. But he gets it.
This is the amazing thing about reading the newspapers, watching TV, is this idea that the people don't realize how good the economy is. It never occurs to them. It never occurs to them to say it's good for me because I'm in the top 20%, but it's not good for people who don't have the investments and the salary I have. It's unbelievable. And then the same people wonder where Donald Trump came from, who he's speaking for. He's speaking for the people they hate. So
I'm sure you've played it on numerous occasions. There is no better exemplar of the bi-coastal elites and the rest of America, the people represented by J.D. Vance's story in Hillbilly Elegy. In that recent primary, what was it, 6 weeks ago? You had Jen Psaki, former White House press secretary. You had Rachel Maddow, and you had the lunatic with the Hitler Jugend haircut, Joy Reid, sitting there watching the exit poll results as people were coming out of the primaries. And Jen Psaki, I mean, who's, if a piece of wood had a brain, it would be smarter than her. She says, the people's number one concern in the exit polls in Virginia is illegal immigration. I live in Virginia, and we're not a border country. I don't understand. Wow. And then Rachel Maddow goes, well, they have a border with West Virginia, titter, 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 let them eat cake. I mean, is there a better example of the utter contempt they feel for tens, if not hundreds of millions of Americans? What do you mean you're bothered by illegal migration? I had my foie gras today in my lovely French restaurant in Georgetown. How absurd.
It's absolutely true. It is absolutely true. And the fact that they can't see it and there's no one there to tell them that they can't see it is just amazing. Now, one of the reasons strange to say, I actually enjoy talking to you. One of the reasons that I enjoy
you only
so
like
much,
smoking my cigars. Okay?
Well, I love smoking your cigars.
You like going to the most exclusive cigar club in America for free. Okay, just fess up. Okay,
you do, and you're very generous with your cigars. But I also like to bring you on so I can run things by you that bother me about Trump, and hear your why they don't.
Butler, Pennsylvania. You did the most MAGA video the world has ever seen. You need to get over yourself. He's the man. He's 78 years old. You're not going to change him, but go ahead.
All right. So yesterday, I really sympathize with this. He seems to be flailing on the subject of abortion. I totally understand that we have failed to move the culture on abortion so that because of Donald Trump, they overturned Roe v. Wade, which was a great blow for semi-decency in this country. But we still have people who think that exterminating the life of an unborn child is somehow a human right, or women's health care, whatever they're calling it. So yesterday he comes on and he says he's going to vote for a measure in Florida to extend the amount of time you can get an abortion. And also he's going to make sure that the government pays for in vitro fertilization when he gets elected. And this just seemed to me like a flail. It seemed to me like he's reaching for an audience that's never going to vote for him. And he's trying to find a place to stand. Even his campaign walked it back, saying he hasn't decided how he's going to vote. How does he handle this? I get the problem, but how does he handle it?
Look, you have to understand on this issue, and I discussed it. I was at Mar-a-Lago when he was actually about to record that video he did on abortion a few months ago. And I'll say publicly the advice I gave him then, because I've said it on my radio show. It's very simple. Look, I'm a cradle Catholic. I thought I would go to my grave with Roe v. Wade on the books. The idea that I'm 53 years old and the most heinous piece of murderous pseudo law was thrown onto the ash heap of history because of the president's nominees to the Supreme Court. God is good, okay? And I see people I know who have been, famous pro-lifers attack the president and moan. Shut the hell up. If you couldn't get rid of Roe v. Wade, stick your head up your backside, okay? He doesn't have to prove his credentials on pro-life to anyone. Get a grip, okay? Also, do you want to win elections? And what I said to him is, sir, you've dealt with this question. It's done. We are a republic of states. You've done the most beautiful thing, which should be, in fact, what we do with most things, except interstate commerce and war. Everything else should be the remit of the state. You have thrown this crucial issue on the basis of subsidiarity back to the people in the states. If California wants to be a satanic hellhole of baby death, let Californians decree that. If Texas and Tennessee wants to ban all abortions, including for and incest, let the people of those states so decree. So number one, we've done it, states decide. And then secondly, because my wife Katie is now the chair of the biggest county for the GOP in Virginia, for Fairfax. And she gets this all the time. People come up and say, what do we say about abortion? Do we say anything or do we run away from it? And I said, what do you mean run away from it? The other side are sacrificing to Moloch and Beelzebub. Talk about them. Talk about the fact that you cannot say last trimester, no abortions, please, and be a Democrat. Talk about Ralph Northam, a pediatrician. I mean, think a stinking pediatrician who, as the governor of Virginia, says, oh, yeah, if the baby survives abortion, put it on a table and decide whether you can kill it afterwards. Talk about the diabolical Prince of Darkness cult they are after you've said, oh, by the way, states should decide. That's my advice to the president then, and it remains my advice to all Republicans who are pro-life and serious on this issue.
Okay, fair enough. So that is what you would tell him to do. And because I don't mind him saying leave it to the states. I mean, ultimately, this is a cultural fight. We're going to have to convince people, and that's Republicans hate doing that. But
and there's a deeper thing, and I know the integralists and the crypto Christian fascist movement, they want to have the feds fix it all. Guys, if you want the feds to fix it, you're not a conservative.
Right.
I mean, this is the massive disconnect. If a conservative says they're conservatives and we want a federal ban on abortion, you ain't a conservative, okay?
Yeah,
Look in the mirror.
I wish that Trump had said that. I mean, I just feel like he's reaching, he loves to be loved.
I'll be honest with you, and I won't say anything more. He's not comfortable with this issue.
Yeah.
Because he's being pummeled. He's being pummeled by the evangelicals who say, oh, even in the woman must be forced to have the baby. And he's going, what? Right?
Yeah.
He's being pummeled by them. And then he grew up in Manhattan, right? And he understands there are, exigencies, right? As far as I'm concerned, as a Catholic, all abortion is evil. There's no mother or the baby. You try and save both if there's a medical emergency. But guys, and I can't believe I'm saying this to you because I hammer you for doing this all the time. You have to be a little bit pragmatic.
Yes, you do hammer me for my realism all the time. Well, I thought about that because we always get in this discussion where I am pragmatic about politics. I understand that you have to win, and winning is sometimes means, doing pragmatic things. But I was thinking about this the other day, that one of the reasons I think we disagree is that your specialty is foreign policy. And in foreign policy, there's a lot more of a black and white. I mean, either you're fighting with somebody or you're not, either they're your friend or you're not. It's not the same thing. Whenever I hear people say politics is war, I think, no, in war, you kill your enemy. In politics, you have to convince your enemy, which is a much, much different project. So let's talk about foreign policy for a minute.
But can I just, on that thread?
Yeah.
I think that is a likely explanation for our division or our prisms that, mine is informed by national security and yours is about domestic politics. But let me just throw that back at you. That would be the case if we were living in a normal age. And I want to doff my cap to you because one of the last times we met, we discussed my colleague and my boss, Steve Bannon. And you said, let's go visit him in prison. Now, I haven't told you this, but he's reached out to me and he said, no, don't visit me. We don't have time for that crap. Now, if Steve Bannon, who is a political prisoner, says, we don't have time for that, it is actually war domestically. We have a political war domestically. And the idea that pragmatism should be on the scales, not really, because you know, Drew, that could be you or me in prison, not just Stephen. And not because we committed a crime, but because we're effective conservatives and we have people who listen to us. We could be in prison with Steve. And as a result,
I agree that it's a crisis,
we have crossed the Rubicon.
Well, except we haven't, in the sense that we're not going to go out and take arms up against our fellow Americans, not yet.
No, I agree with you, but what our biggest disagreement usually is around, making footsie with the rhinos, all right? Or, and I'm saying, no, they're scum. They should all go to hell, right? I mean,
can they vote for us in hell?
Right?
Can they vote for us in hell? That's
if they're Democrats, they can. I'm sorry, you wanted to talk about foreign policy.
Yes. So, Donald Trump went for 4 years without starting a war, which seems to be some kind of American record. And
Which is
now
weird for a warmonger.
I know, well, a warmonger and a tyrant who's Hitler. I think it was kind of, he's a very bad Hitler. He's a very bad at being Hitler. But now we have a serious situation brought on by Biden's weakness and his hesitancy. We've got, the thing in the Middle East, which is just, could really ignite. And in Ukraine, we have, Putin's a genuinely bad guy, but there are questions about where we go. How do we get out of this? How do we get out of this mess that Biden has gotten us into?
Elect President Trump. I mean, it really isn't hyperbole. I mean, I guarantee you, having watched the man, seen his preternatural skills when it comes to strategy, whether it's him whacking 300 Russians in Syria and Putin craps his pants, or dropping 52 cruise missiles on a Syrian air base full of chemical weapons and telling Xi Jinping over chocolate cake, you know what I just did in Syria. The guy is just, he knows. I'm going to put an article on my Substack soon on what we call a surgical strength. It's what Katie and I came up with. His principle isn't intervention or boots on the ground. It is the devastating use of force when necessary. And also behind closed doors, rhetorically. I guarantee you, if President Trump is elected by the afternoon of January 20th next year, the presidents of Ukraine and Russia will have been spoken to behind closed doors. And President Trump will tell Zelensky, I know it's tough, and I know you've lost Crimea, but you will negotiate now. The bloodshed ends. You will negotiate. Otherwise, no support from me. And he says to Vlad, ceasefire, peace treaty now. And if you don't, what we have given Ukraine in the last 3 years will look like a old ham sandwich, and we will give them everything. And I guarantee you, they will so crap their pants that the shooting will have ended within 24 hours.
All right, I'm gonna hold you to that, but I think at least that sounds like a plan as opposed to what we're doing now. What about in Israel? I mean, Trump to me was one of the best friends Israel ever had. The Abraham Accords were as somebody said, they didn't even do anything new. They simply brought some standing arrangements out into the public, out into the open.
They did something really new. And I give credit to Jared for this. Because when Jared was made the chief negotiator, look, I have 20 plus years in national security and counterterrorism. Jared has nothing. He's a very successful businessman. And I went to him and said, Jared, you want me to spin you up? You want me to give you a background briefing on the Middle East and who the bad guys are and blah, blah, blah. And he said to me, to his credit, I didn't take it personally because it's to his credit. He said, sorry, Sebastian, I'm not going to listen to anyone. I need to go there and see it for myself and talk to these people. And that's what he did with Jason Greenblatt, with the amazing David Friedman, our ambassador. And he learned the hard way. You know what the novelty was? A year in, everything's foggy bottom, and the State Department had told them, and the expert class said, you can't have peace in the Middle East unless you talk to the Palestinians. They said, nope, bad faith actors, they don't get a seat at the table. So they went to everyone else and shut them out and said, guys, you're a bunch of lunatics who teach or kill kids that all Jews are going to die and have to be killed. When you stop teaching your kids that all Jews should be killed, then you have a seat at the table. That's why we had the Abraham Accords, because we said, you are unfit to negotiate with.
But now the fighting is kinetic. I mean, how do we get to the point? What it seems to me what Biden is doing in the Middle East is despicable, that he's basically telling the Israelis they can't win against an enemy who is openly set on destroying them.
Right.
What would Trump do differently?
Well, nothing differently. We would continue to do what we did in the first 4 years. I mean, people don't understand. We had the most swinging sanction regime on the fascistic state of Iran the world had ever seen. In 18 months, the stock market of Iran had lost more than 50% of its value because of our sanctions. At the end of the Trump administration, that theocratic fascist regime was on the brink of economic collapse. If we'd had another 2 years or 3 years, it would have collapsed, and the proud Persian people would have taken their country back, not because we invaded, not because of some lunatic neocon, whatever, but the people of Persia would have liberated themselves. And let me tell you this, when that happens, the Middle East will look like paradise, because the real threat to stability, and to us, think about it, a Pakistani was just arrested with money from Iran that was to fund an assassination plot against President Trump. These are our enemies as well as the Jews. So we continue our policy of bringing the mullahs to their knees so the Iranian people can take their country back. And then from Somalia on down, the Houthis, all these proxies, Hezbollah, Hamas, collapse because we're not giving Iran billions of dollars of taxpayer money, and the regime itself has collapsed. So they can't prosecute proxy wars or kill more Jews on Jewish soil. So the answer is, Trump won redux.
Yeah. It is amazing to me, this Obama fantasy that somehow Iran could be brought into this, the world of nations.
It's even simpler than that. And your interview with Mike Duran was superb, and he gets it. But there's even a simpler version of why Obama did what he did. They're more. I mean, look, the left are sons of. I mean, they are organized ideological fanatics, but they're also morons. They don't have a brain amongst them. There's not one VDH. Name for me one VDH or one Gingrich on their side. Zip. They've gone. They don't exist. And Obama actually believed, think of this, the Iran deal was, these Sunni extremists are getting really strong. Al-Qaeda, ISIS, they're kind of, they disturb the balance of the feng shui in the Middle East. So let's pump up these Shia extremists. So we'll have a balance of extremists. This is how cretinous these people are. Look at Jake Sullivan. I wouldn't trust the National Security Advisor to make me a cappuccino. That's the national security. And could you remember Kissinger? That guy is supposed to be Kissinger.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. Even Mike did the best job I've ever heard of giving an explanation of what was going through Obama's mind, but it's still just jibber jabber to me. It's amazing. All right, I'm running out of time, but give me what you want from Trump in the first 100 days domestically. What do you hope to see from him?
Well, read Joel Pollak's book. You interviewed him recently, my former Breitbart colleague. You've got 200 actions there. What do I want? Drill. I want the monkey off the back of American businesses and American citizens and taxpayers. I want the military revitalized. I want DEI, CRT made a crime. You will be fired if you teach it, if you practice it in federal government. The idea that Fort Bragg, I have a general friend of mine, his son comes back from teaching as a Green Beret, the Estonians, how to do irregular warfare if Russia invades. He's training little Estonia to survive another Russian onslaught. He comes back to Fort Bragg, not Fort Liberty, you scumbags, Fort Bragg, and he goes into mandatory pronoun training as a Green Beret. I mean, Konyets, end of film, just stop, no, basta. And then beyond that, the most important thing, and maybe I could have a role in this, it's not the deep state anymore, Drew. It's the in-your-face state. We have to have those who have used the power of the most powerful government in the world to politically persecute their fellow Americans stand trial for those abuses. Whether it's a 73-year-old grandmother put in prison because she prayed in an abortion clinic, or whether it's the people who caused the death of Matt Perna, a beautiful young man who walked peacefully through Congress on January the 6th, was on a misdemeanor trespass charge. And when they gave him his court date on the anniversary of his mother's death, they told him, you know what? We've got this other thing we used against those guys in Wall Street. We're going to turbo up your charges to a terrorist charge, and you're going to get 20 years. So what does beautiful Matt Perna do? Hangs himself. Yeah. The prosecutors who said, we're going to do that to a man who walked around Congress, they need to stand trial in front of a jury of their peers.
Sebastian Gorka, always hard to get him to talk. He's a shy, retiring guy who doesn't like to express his opinions too bluntly. But if you want to hear more of him, he is on Salem Radio every day on the Newsmax TV. Always a great show. Sebastian, always love talking to you. It's great to see you. Thank you for coming on.
Too much fun. And check out especially my piece on Butler, Pennsylvania at my Substack, sebastiangorka.substack.com. Thanks, Drew.
Excellent. Always love talking to that guy. I mean, he's clear in what he thinks, but also is honest. He doesn't deceive about who people are and where they're going. I think you get a very clear sense of MAGA world from him, and it's a good thing to see. We'll be back on Friday with the Andrew Klavan Show. I hope you will be there. I will be there. I'd love to see you.